Welcome to another special edition of the Underground Bunker podcast. I'm Tony Ortega, and I'm currently covering the Danny Masterson trial in Los Angeles. But the trial isn't the only Scientology news going on here. LEAH Remini has been on fire at Twitter as she reacted to some new revelations about LAPD corruption by reminding people about how the LAPD handled her Shelly Miscavige missing person report in 2013. There's been a lot of press coverage about LEAH and her tweets. But of course, she's talking about stories that she and the Underground Bunker have been covering for years. We are so happy that she decided to join us and talk about these crucial Scientology issues, the LAPD, the vanished Shelly Miscavige, and of course, the Danny Masterson trial. Well, LEAH Remini, wow, I hope we cause enough of a commotion today that maybe Philip Cohen will ask for another mistrial.
Right. Well, we know that will happen regardless.
Thank you so much for joining me today, LEAH. How are
Oh,
you?
it is my pleasure. I'm okay. First of all, I've been nursing a cold for 3 weeks. It won't go away. So forgive I already sound nasally in general, but this is extra gift that keeps giving. But I'm okay, Tony. As you well know, this has been many years of us fighting this corrupt organization, and it's exhausting. It's an exhausting process.
It is exhausting, and I know you've got other things going on. Your career is growing great. You're at school and all this, but they keep dragging you back in, don't they?
Well, they're distracting. They are genius at that, right? If nothing else, at trying to attack whistleblowers and discrediting whistleblowers by their many front groups. They have Sea Org members, as you well know, Tony, who make $50 a week, who work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, and their sole purpose of existence in Scientology is to attempt to silence those who are speaking out against the abusive practices, and that's an exhaustive process to put up with since I've left Scientology, and as you know, you've been in this fight for many, many years, and you were never a Scientologist.
Well, that's the thing. People may
Pardon
not
me.
realize whether they see it all the time, but this organization spends a lot of money
Yes.
smearing you and me and Mike and some others 24 hours a day online, and we just do our best to ignore it. But some things we can't ignore, and there was certainly some amazing news that came out this week. I think you and I were both just really blown away by it. But there is this LAPD retired captain, Corey Palka, who was the commander of the Hollywood division. And you and I have talked about him for years, about how he was so openly a cheerleader for Scientology at the LAPD.
Correct.
And this incredible story came out. The first I saw was Gene Mattis at Variety did a fantastic story about how some new documents came out from the New York Attorney General showing that when a woman came to the LAPD to report she had been sexually assaulted by the CEO of CBS, Les Moonves, Corey Palka decided not only to kill that investigation, but do what he could to make sure it didn't become public. And he has been caught now. It's some of the most blatant police corruption we have seen in many years. And it just happens to be this guy who has been Scientology's point man in the LAPD. And so you then put out this incredible set of tweets helping people understand just what this news means.
Correct. And I was shocked, Tony, and I guess I'm still shocked that I'm shocked, right? Because we all know what Scientology is capable of, right? And there are policies that mandate that Scientology infiltrate, uh, you know, all areas of society. So education, criminal reform programs, educational programs, police departments, and this policy basically says it's the public image, right? And L. Ron Hubbard says, it is our job to let people know what they should think of us, and we need to infiltrate these areas. And that's exactly what they've done through a Scientology term that L. Ron Hubbard uses, safe pointing.
Right.
They safe point these departments by hiring off-duty police officers to be at their events, and they pay them a large sum of money. And I believe, you and I have talked about this story when we went to Riverside County Sheriff's Office with a family member of the former president of Scientology, Heber Gents, who hasn't been seen in public as well. And one of their officers came out after we got nowhere with that, came out and said, "Listen, I just got to tell you off the record, I don't want to be on camera or anything, but they've been safe pointing us for years. They have barbecues at Golden Era Productions, and they invite all of our families, and they treat us like kings and queens because people ask, well, what's in it for
Right.
these police officers, right? Well, that's what's in it. They parade around Tom Cruise and celebrities of Scientology, which, I know you did a podcast recently where you were asked about celebrity. Yeah, there's not many celebrities in Scientology. Let's just put it that way. I mean, there's many more actors in the Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA who are not Scientologists. The majority,
Right.
they're
Right.
99.9% of celebrities are not Scientologists, right? So I don't want to give people the idea that Scientology, breeds or makes celebrities because they don't. Um, so my point is that there's a lot in it for them, right? They get treated almost as gods, right? They get to hobnob with celebrities, and they get a
Right.
nice paycheck,
Well,
and
and
they
you
get
know
awards. Yeah, they go ahead. Babe.
the sad thing about that, Leah,
Yeah,
is that that works
right,
because you would think these public servants who have been entrusted to carry a gun
right,
and protect the public would not be so easily swayed by that list you just gave. I mean, you
right.
gave a list of all these things Scientology does for them.
Yeah,
You would think that wouldn't work, and it's just kind of a sad commentary on these. And I will say I'm grateful you allowed me to see that episode before it aired, and that was an amazing moment. I wish the public could have seen that. This a police officer came over.
yes,
You didn't put him on camera, but we got to hear him talk
yes, yes,
about how he just laid it out
yes.
that this is what Scientology does to subvert these law enforcement agencies.
Correct,
And the sort of symbol of it, I mean, we kind of suspected it was going on, but the most blatant, the most visible figure of all was Corey Polka. I mean, you were
correct.
complaining about him to me for years.
For years because of what happened when I went there. I was there twice, and we're talking about the Hollywood division. I want to be clear about that. And not every police officer in the Hollywood division is involved with Scientology. There's a few. There's quite a few of them who wanted nothing to do with Scientology and who have said no. And I want to be clear about that. We're talking about a few bad apples here, right? And some who are just kind of unaware of what's really going on. And then you have people like Corey Polka, who knows exactly what's going on, who was made aware of what was going on, and he treated that. I mean, I remember when I went in, I saw there was a gift certificate with a letter. I believe it was from Greg LeClaire, who was a Sea Org member at Celebrity Center, who said, please come and join us. Here's $35 or whatever it was. Come join us for lunch at the Renaissance Restaurant, which is Scientology's restaurant there at Celebrity Center in Hollywood. And I said, this is not a good look, you know, Captain. I mean, and the fact is that I doubled the money. I said, you listen, you're claiming you care so much about these children, and I'll double the money for you not to involve yourself with an organization that is hurting children, that hurts children, that these are documented instances of abuse, of sexual abuse, mental abuse, and he wouldn't take it. So how concerned was Mr. Polka when it came to getting donations for this charity of Scientology? Right, the Police Activities League is what we're talking about. And the other fact is they have a picture of a well-known Scientologist framed in one of their interview rooms, and they had a Scientology kiosk in there It's baffling to me, and all I'm asking for, Tony, is that Scientology be included in this investigation. That's all I'm asking.
That's I mean, it's just a very basic request. I can't understand why they wouldn't want to do that. I mean, Paulka's fingers were in everything, and his relationship to Scientology was so visible.
Right.
I assume they are going to investigate this guy. They need to. I don't know what charges he could face, but they owe it to the public to find out what this guy was doing, and I just
I
hope
agree,
they look at the
and Tony,
Scientology part.
we don't know. This is what we don't know. We don't know how many Sea Org members walked into the Hollywood Police Division hoping to receive refuge, maybe who were Sea Org members who wanted to leave Scientology, other victims of crimes of Scientology. We don't know what was squashed. And that's why I am asking for them to just be involved in this investigation.
Well, you may be asking for these LAPD's relationship to Scientology to be investigated, but
Yes.
Scientology is asking for you to be investigated because you dared to file a missing person report 9 years ago.
And I tweeted out the form that they have to fill out. And by all means, they should try. I welcome it.
Yeah, I remember when you filed that report in 2013, and the LAPD did its best to make it sound like it was all frivolous, and the press bought it. That's what in my story this week I tried to explain that history, that the LAPD made it look like it had just opened and shut it on the same day, and the other press sort of gave that impression. But actually, of course, they had spent several days, and they claimed they had gone to see her.
Right.
Um, and Scientology's line from the very beginning was that Leah Remini is wasting the police's resources, and now they're asking for an investigation. But you filed a missing person report 9 years ago about a woman who has still not been seen in public since then. So how could that be a waste of police resources when they never learned anything?
Well, honey, they know that that's not a waste of police resources. They know that it's
Yep.
not frivolous. They know it's not unfounded, and that's
Right.
why I try not to go down what they're trying to do, which is distract the public and, like you said, other journalists from actually reporting on the actual question, which is where is Shelley, right? And so when and you rightfully pointed it out, the press falls for this instead of saying, well, okay, but where is the woman? You see, and they go down this kind of line of reporting and forwarding Scientology's line, and they are basically doing the work of Scientology. So, and that's as well equally as frustrating because they should be asking the question, well, where is this woman? And now, Tony, you know that when you
Yeah.
join the Sea organization, which is the paramilitary part of Scientology, you sign billion-year contracts. You also sign over all of your legal rights. So,
And you did this. How old were you when you signed your contract?
uh, 12 or 13? Like,
You
my mother couldn't even speak on my behalf. So if I was put into, being held, let's say, like, on what is it, a 5150, where, Scientology had the right to take me out of the hospital.
hmm,
Not my own parent, once you're
wow.
in the Sea Org. So Scientology, could speak on that person's behalf. That is unless they have credible evidence, like the LAPD said, unless we actually are being, presented with evidence that the woman is being harmed, that she's being held against her will, could we, go further, right? So seeing a representative on behalf of Shelly Miscavige would suffice here. And that is what I was saying. Did you actually see her? I don't know that they actually saw her, Tony.
Right. Well, and just so people listening to this that maybe don't know the history, I actually talked to, after your missing person report,
Yeah.
was made public, and the LAPD said it was unfounded, which made it sound like it was frivolous.
Of course, which that doesn't
I
really that isn't the classification, by the way. But yes, you're right. Go ahead.
I did call the LAPD, and they put me in touch with a Lieutenant Andre Dawson who was in charge of the investigation. And I asked him, I said, "So what actually occurred?" And he said two of his detectives had gone to Shelley's location, which he would not reveal,
Which is
and
right.
checked on her to make
Uh-huh.
sure she was okay. And he said she was okay, and she did not want to make a public statement. And I
Uh-huh.
then asked him, "Lieutenant Dawson, this conversation between your two detectives and Shelley, did that take place in the presence of other Scientology officials?"
Right.
And his exact words were, "That's classified."
Correct. And when I
And
asked Detective
yeah,
Dawson, "Did you actually see her herself, or was it a representative?" He said, "That's classified."
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, you
So
got further than me, but Tony, this is a man who was speaking at celebrity
right,
center
right,
events.
right. So I talked to him in 2013 when you filed your missing person report, and he retired like a year later.
Mhm.
And then you and I started seeing him in Scientology promotional flyers. They were, he would give these speeches at Scientology facilities. Oh, that was, wow.
So I'm supposed to believe that they saw her when you're speaking on all things at Scientology I about human trafficking?
Right,
Of all things, this is what you're at Scientology at the podium speaking about. You're on their invitation. Your name is Are you kidding me, Tony?
yeah,
So all I'm asking is, hey, Scientology, you make hundreds of videos, you spend millions of dollars on websites attempting to discredit and slander whistleblowers' names. Why not just prove me wrong, put this thing to rest, have Shelly do a video, tell me to go fuck myself? Because
right,
guess what, Scientology? It wouldn't be like a ha ha got you moment. At least I knew the woman was alive.
right.
That's
And
all I
and
want
let
to know.
and let
Secondly,
me
and then we could go to work to trying to see if she, is being held against her will. Because as you
right.
reported, Shelly Miscavige was rumored to be up in Arrowhead, California, with people living across the street to make sure that she guard gated facility. Nobody could even pull their car over on the street that supposedly Shelly is at. Nobody could Nobody could just stop there. I mean, there's nowhere you've posted all of that on your
Yeah,
on
you
your
have to park. You have to park about a quarter mile away and walk up the road.
and then you
Eh,
could be cited for trespassing. And what can you do? It's a long driveway. It's guard gated. You can't see into
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's like a military base, and you just can't penetrate it, right?
right.
So the second part of that is I'd love to know that just Shelly is alive because last we spoke to Valerie Haney, who used to be her assistant and Dave Miscavige's assistant, Shelly was being taken away by men crying into a black sedan.
Yeah, I mean, she's been seen since then. I mean,
Well, we don't know. We
yeah,
just
no, she was
okay,
at her father's funeral 2 years later. I
okay,
have actually talked to people who were there,
okay,
and I really believe she is still being held at that small mountain compound. I've actually been able to get some recent public documents that put her there.
okay,
So I do believe she's there. But you're right. It's a compound. It's got armed guards across the street, and she's not leaving anytime soon. But the question is always has been, what does she think of it? And I have always said she may be resigned to her fate. She may be, but based on the things she has said to people over the years, I am convinced she is aware of the situation. It's not like, oh, here's your new Sea Org, you know, uh, uh, posting,
post, yeah,
and then she's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. No, she knows she's a prisoner. She's aware of that, and
right.
she knows she's never going to leave that place. And she may be resigned to that. She may be not trying to escape. But why can't she visit her sisters? You know
Tony,
why? it's just, I mean, it's so clear she's a prisoner, and I can't believe law enforcement isn't interested in at least checking it out.
I, Tony, I agree. I just want to know that Shelley. First, I want to know that Shelley's alive, and second, I want to know that she's not being held against her will. And that's all. So why doesn't Scientology just take the time to make that video? Why not have Shelley tell me to go fuck myself?
Can I offer a theory, and you
Yes.
know so much more about it, and you can tell me if I'm close to the mark or not. Based on the many people I've talked to that knew both Dave and Shelley really well, and Dave's the way Dave has also dealt with other people that were formerly close to him. You know, Dave is this megalomaniac maniacal leader, super paranoid, and at some point, no matter how close somebody is, I mean, you know, these people like Jaeger and these other people were friends.
And these are all senior executives of Scientology who have also not been seen in public.
Right.
Yes.
He gets paranoid and just
Mhm.
decides, okay, I can't, you know, they're an enemy now. And he makes them disappear in a way that they no longer exist to him. And so they're either in the hole or in the RPF, or they're like Shelly up at this special base where nobody ever sees her. And he has decided that that person is just simply not, you know, in his world anymore. So for him, under pressure from the public, under pressure from Leah Remini, to then send a film crew up there to film her just to show the world she's alive
Mhm.
would be proving he was wrong. And
Correct.
he can't do that.
And
He
not to mention
cannot do that.
that he will not answer to me or any WOG, right? Remember, and SPs, right? They
That
consider
would
us
be too much of a, you know,
losing, yeah.
losing a face for him,
Yes, and
right?
also let's remember this. What Shelley knows would put David Miscavige in prison. And if you recall, Tony, I told you this a long time ago when I met with Dave Miscavige, that was one of the things he said to me. Was, "Do you know what I gotta do all fucking day, Leah? What I do all fucking day in, day out, is I'm fucking tracking down SPs, Leah, and
You're
my
doing a
wife,
wonderful.
and Shelly. I have to protect Shelly from being subpoenaed, Leah, all fucking day and night, instead of clearing the fucking planet." Like, this is what we're so he knows very well
Yeah,
Shelley cannot be, if she's alive and well, cannot risk Shelley being subpoenaed.
yeah.
Because Claire Headley wrote me many, many years a document that said what Shelley knew. And
Mm.
it is hundreds of incidents of physical abuse.
Yeah, and he's like I said, he's just never going to acknowledge any of us. He's never going to prove that she's
Oh,
alive.
baby, he's acknowledging us every day. Baby, that's all he does. Day in and day out is acknowledge us.
He sure spends the money to try to disrupt our lives,
And
doesn't
if
he?
we're so inconsequential to your booming religion, why are you spending millions upon millions of dollars having people stalked and followed, and your thousands of websites on all of us, and your video productions of us? Why? Why? If we mean nothing, if we're such liars and just bitter apostates.
No, you're absolutely right. That's all he does. That's his whole
That's all
job.
he does. Well, that's what he
Yeah.
told me. That's what he does day in and day out.
Hmm.
Is rooting out SPs within his own organization as well as outside. Like, this is what they are consumed with, as evidenced by Scientology's policies written by L. Ron Hubbard when he was starting to be found out by the government, by other agencies, but even by the APA, and everybody was calling Scientology fraud and Dianetics. quackery and it wasn't backed by any science, what did he do? He started getting very busy writing policies of fair game, and then he started to write thousands and thousands of policies about it's us against them. It's us it's us against the AMA. It's us against the APA. It's us against name it. Journalists, psychiatry, any field of mental health that's real, Scientologists are against it all. And it's all the psychs, the psychiatrists, it's this is all based in psychiatry, and psychiatry is the evil of man, and they okay, my dog had something to say about that. And, that is the mainstay. I mean, if you were to study Scientology policies, you can see that. You can see that it just started to be about, "This is what we do. We attack those who expose us." And that's a lot of the teachings of Scientology.
And Hubbard has died, and they can't change that. So they're using the same playbook over and
Well, they
over and
have to,
over
honey,
again.
because they don't know anything, right? Other than that, right? Is what
Yeah.
the mentality that I was under as well. Now remember, an SP to me per L. Ron Hubbard is in the same sentence as oppressive person, an enemy, is the same as Hitler. And so I grew up thinking, wow, these SPs, they should be eradicated, like L. Ron Hubbard said, from the face of the earth. And that is what they are trying to do to all of us, right? They want to accuse us of heinous crimes so that advertisers won't advertise on the things that we do. That people don't want Scientologists showing up to their place of work with signs of you're harboring and supporting a religious bigot, and you're supporting hate speech, and you know people just don't want this craziness around them. And so and a lot of times it does work because people just don't wanna be bothered, right, with this craziness from Scientology, and then they start going after people, individual people. I mean, on the aftermath, they were following makeup artists, editors, they were stalking and harassing them, you know, hundreds of letters I mean, the Stan League, the Scientology front group, and the Hate Monitor. I mean, they have so many front groups on social media, Tony, it's just insane. But they wrote 400 letters in one season, written by 7 people who were Sea Org members.
And the sad thing is, it often works. I
Yeah,
mean, it doesn't keep you from speaking out. It doesn't keep me from reporting. It
right.
doesn't keep Mike from putting out a great book.
No,
But, many people are silenced that, people don't hear about, but you and I hear about them and
right,
realize, oh, that person decided not to say anything, or that
right, right,
studio decided not to do that show.
right.
That's the sad thing, is that their tactics do work.
Yes.
And I've actually heard from some journalists that say, I know how bad they were in the '70s, Tony, but they're not doing that now. And I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
There's even after HBO's going clear, even after Leah's 3 seasons of a TV show, there are still studios too terrified
yeah.
to do anything about Scientology.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I had a pitch meeting once, and this guy was looking at the sizzle, and he turned around in his chair after the sizzle stopped, and he turned around, and a sizzle is just a sample of a show, right? He
Yeah.
turned around, he said, "That's amazing." He goes, "But I got to be honest with you, I'm too big of a pussy to do a show like this." And that's basically, what you're dealing with here, right? You're dealing with a lot of people who are not brave enough to stand up and do something about it. And listen, we've all weathered the storm. That's the thing. It is they're all empty threats. They're all, they are all talk. They've never sued me or Mike or you because they know they can't, because they're telling the truth. And I've often said, stop with the threats and fucking bring the lawsuit.
Yeah.
And they don't,
Yeah.
because they know that they can't. They know that they can't. And, it's heartbreaking, Tony, because there's still a piece of me that still doesn't understand why they do what they do when they know that these people are telling the truth. And I know that's a naive thing to say.
No, I mean, it's such a powerful idea that you and your group have the real truth.
Yes.
Everyone else are zombies, sleepwalking through life. only we realize the truth, and we might have to break a few of their laws and ruin a few of their lives, but ultimately we're going to save this planet.
Right, and
And
that's
once you
you're absolutely right, Tony. That's exactly the bottom line of it all. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, baby.
No,
Go
it's
ahead.
just once you buy into that idea,
Yes.
it's a very powerful idea, because then when somebody comes and say, "Hey, you're breaking the law," they're like, "Breaking the law? I'm saving the planet."
Correct.
And it's just I want people, sometimes they'd say to me, "Oh, Tom Cruise is only in because he's, being blackmailed." I said, "No, he has really bought into this idea that L. Ron Hubbard is the greatest human being that ever lived, and that they
Yeah.
are saving the planet." And once you buy into that, it's so hard to get out of it. So I
Yes.
understand what you mean, that it's still kind of puzzling to you why these people are still doing this, but they're convinced that, oh, so they ruin a few. I mean, we actually got a guy on tape. I really owe Phil Jones on this one. He got a call from, I think, somebody at a Canadian, some Canadian Sea Org member was doing some cold calls of former members, and Phil taped the call. And Phil actually asked him about, I'm uncomfortable with disconnection. I'm uncomfortable with the families are being split apart. And on tape, the CR guy, not realizing he was being recorded, said, "Well, we're going to have to break a few things to fix this world."
Yeah.
And that's the attitude. They
Right.
don't care about our laws, about our moral, codes. We have a
No.
planet to fix. We have a planet to save, and we're going to push people out of the way.
Yes, and this is what's called in Scientology the greatest good, right? Like, yes, some
Yeah.
things have to suffer, right, for mankind, for us to save mankind. And remember, they believe in different lies, right? That they've lived before, that they'll live again, right? So
Yeah.
they're like, and you've posted these letters from Scientology parents on your website where it says, "Hey, sorry, kid, I have to disconnect from you, but hopefully I'll see you in another lifetime," right? And
Yeah.
and and this is a mother disconnecting from her only child.
Right. Yeah.
This is a
Terrible.
father or a child doing this to their parents, right? Because they feel like, okay, listen, I've lived before, I'll live again, and hopefully we'll hook up, in another lifetime. And so that justifies this behavior, as well as, L. Ron Hubbard teaches that you are, they have the tools to save mankind. And it's without Scientology, and this is the extremists. There's no like some extremists in Scientology. Scientology is an extremist ideology. All Scientologists are extremists. And so they
It's really
all
it's yeah,
believe this. Yeah.
it's really important to understand. It is a fundamentalist group.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I just was talking to a friend of mine on a podcast, and he started talking about how in Christianity there are some people that are more sort of hardcore about the Bible and some less. And
Right.
that may be the case, but that in Scientology it's a fundamentalist group.
Yes.
Once you're in, you have to adopt that entire code. You
The
can't just like
entire
pick and
code.
choose.
No, you
Yeah.
can't. There's no assimilating the information. Like I said, and we've gone over this too, is that the policies are written to be followed. You have to sit in a course room, you have to read the policies. And if you don't understand any word, you're supposed to look up all the words. You're checked out on all these policies. What does this mean? What does this word mean? How does this, there's no like, well, what I think is what does L. Ron Hubbard say?
Right.
And that's it. You follow the policy. Then there's a policy about policy never changing. And so they have to follow these policies. Even in their code of honor, Tony, it
Yeah.
says, never fear to hurt another in a just cause. Now, just meaning right, moral, right?
Yeah.
And destroying somebody's life, lying under oath, not reporting Scientologists to the authorities are all just causes because you have the technology to save mankind. And so all of these things take a back seat, and I mean all of these things, meaning your family, your income, doing what's right, telling the truth, you know, takes a back seat to the goal of Scientology, which is you protect Scientology at all costs.
Well, let's talk about one particular part of that code that's come up and become very important in court. And that is,
Yeah,
I had heard this from so many Scientologists.
yeah,
It's just not controversial in the world of Scientology. It's stated right there in the ethics book. You are not supposed to turn in a fellow Scientologist to civil authorities, which of course
Correct.
includes the police. And
Right.
every Scientologist I've talked to said that, of course, this is very basic. You know not to turn somebody in. I mean, you
Yes.
were taught that outright, right, Leah?
Yes. Not only are we taught that, because when I was forced to join the Sea Org when I was 12 or 13, we were told and drilled, meaning drilled, Tony. You're sat in a room, you're told, "Okay, I'm gonna pretend to be Child Protective Services. I'm gonna pretend to be a police officer. Here's what we're ready, start. Do you go to school? Well, kind of. Flunk. This is what you say.
Oh,
Okay, let's do it again. Do you go to school? Yes. Okay, you flunk. You paused. Do it again. Do you go to
wow.
school? Yes. Good. Next question. And so we
Right.
were trained how to lie to authorities at a very young age. There's a drill in Scientology how not to tell the truth, and how sorry, not how to avoid answering a question. And
Right.
Scientologists are drilled on how to do that. Uh,
That's amazing. That's
and,
amazing.
and and listen, Tony, I wanna remind everybody of a story, and I hope you post that again. What happened with the Scientology daycare?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the same people that are involved, the Scientology Sea Org members who are involved in this particular with the Jane Does here, who were Scientologists, uh, had the same people involved in this is that they as were in the story that you posted about the daycare, the Scientology daycare. And Julian Schwartz, who is also my person when I was in Scientology, is involved in all of these as because he works for David Miscavige. He handles, you know, uh, high profile cases such as these. And Julian Schwartz is a Scientology employee, and Tony, what they do is very clever. They will call Scientologists in and say, "Now we want to show you a policy by L. Ron Hubbard," and it says it is a high crime. It's because remember, Scientology has their own laws, right? They believe superior to real law, and they call the real law WOG law.
Right.
Okay, so they'll say, "So I'm going to show you Scientology policy," and it says that a Scientologist is not allowed to, not permitted to give up another Scientologist to the civil authorities, but Scientology can when they deem that they can't get out of it, right? Or they see that they might be found to be responsible. So they can report it, but that then what they do is they tell their Scientologists now when you're contacted by law enforcement, you don't need to give any answers. You don't need to cooperate, which is what they did in this story with the children who were molested in a Scientology daycare. And this is, of course, happens because this is Scientology policy. So anytime a crime is committed in Scientology, you tell your Scientology caretakers. And that would be your auditor or your ethics officer. And in this case, Julian Schwartz was the ethics officer. The auditor was Angie LeClaire. And there was, who are the other ones? Um,
In other words, all the same people that were involved with the
yes, yes,
Jane Doe's
yes,
and the Danny Masterson thing.
yes, yes. Ellery. There's a bunch of other employees of the Sea Org who I'm sure have gone missing. uh, because they have it there in the folders, right? So they know that these crimes were committed because they reported it. These women reported the crime to what they thought was the authority at the time, and that is Scientology. That is what we as Scientologists are supposed to do: report it to Scientology, and that's exactly what they did. It was Scientology who didn't report it to the
Yeah.
authorities.
Right.
And I've said this before, Tony, that Scientology should be a co-defendant in this case, but they are
Well,
not.
and you're talking about the Danny Masterson trial. Yes. I mean, that's been very interesting watching this trial is that Judge Charlene O'Mado has allowed a certain amount of Scientology in, but she's been very clear that she just wants enough brought in to help explain why these women did what they did and why they didn't come forward sooner.
Well, they
But
did,
she,
but hang on. They did.
yeah,
I don't wanna keep this line going because they did. They reported it when it happened to Scientology. They were Scientologists at the time.
right,
Not only did they report it to Scientology, but they also violated another Scientology law, which we should talk about because there's a Scientology gag order that's put in place. When you report a crime in Scientology to your Scientology auditor, which is considered a counselor in Scientology, or your Scientology ethics officer, which is the person who hands out punishments to you like a parent would when you're a Scientologist, whether you're young or old. Uh, you are then told by your ethics officer you're not allowed to tell anybody else this story in Scientology, including your parents and your best friends. So not only did they violate Scientology policy later by, in fact, going to the authorities, but they also violated the policy, the gag order, because they did tell their
right.
parents. They did tell their trusted friends who were Scientologists. They were doing everything against Scientology policy. They did report it, Tony. They did
Hmm.
report it.
Right, but, as you pointed out, on over the Halloween weekend, you wanted people to understand what these women have been up against, and you put out a series of tweets about how Scientologists can't turn each other in,
Correct.
and you did a great job explaining the whole situation, and that next Monday, Philip Cohen asked for a mistrial
Of course he did.
becau because you were tweeting. Leah, you're causing problems with all this tweeting.
No, nobody I know, but nobody gives a shit what we're saying. So, the listen, the judge is doing a great job in my opinion of just wanting to hear the evidence, right? Let's just see the evidence. That's what this it's supposed to be based on, right? The fact that people are reporting on what's going on. But, Philip Cohen is going to, desperately try to call for mistrial at every turn.
You've been keeping an eye on it. Tell me what you think about how the Jane Does have done, testifying
Well,
and being under
listen, remember
cross-examination.
let's remember, these brave women have been putting up with for years stalking, harassing. They have been consistently fair game by Scientology since they reported these crimes to the to law enforcement, right? And they have been dealing with this day in and day out, which is what the civil case is based on, the stalking
Right.
and the fair gaming of them. They have been through what most don't have to deal with when being so brave as to go to the authorities. And they have been dealing with this day in and day out. So that they are resilient enough to continue on, I think they've done amazing. I think they have advocated for themselves and others in ways that most don't have to.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I saw them testify at the preliminary hearing a year ago and testify this time, and I think that going through that experience a year ago prepared them even better this time. I thought Cohen just did not get the kind of, punches in that Tom Mesereau did. I think these women did even better this time, and other people that kind of are familiar with the history and everything were telling me how really Jane Doe 3 in particular, just was so powerful on the stand. And last year, I think going through that preliminary hearing a year ago was good for them and
Right.
prepared them for this.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, Tony. My heart goes out to them because, once again, what they've been put through, what their families have been put through since coming forward, and the fact that they are they are continuing the fight says a lot about them and their strength and their resilience. I think the way they've been treated by the defense attorneys is deplorable. These are victims of violent crimes. They've been through a lot already with that. How most victims don't have to deal with um, a $3 billion Goliath fighting against them. Usually, people want to tell the truth when a crime has been committed, or they were told something, or they witnessed something. And here, when you're dealing with Scientologists, they're going to lie their way out of anything to protect Scientology. And these are their former friends. And now, remember, too, when you are a Scientologist and raised in Scientology, your Scientology parents become non existent. Scientology becomes your primary caretaker. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's even more traumatizing when you're talking about people who you saw and revered as your primary caretaker, and so to feel not only deserted by, let's say, movements like the Me Too movement. Again, Scientologists were left out of these conversations. Victims of Scientology were not applauded and surrounded with support by these organizations, um, as other victims were and are, and they have their primary caretaker lying about them, attempting to hurt them, to destroy their lives when they know they're telling the truth. And that is doubly heartbreaking, Tony, that they have to deal with this day in and day out. They have to deal with their Scientology parents getting on the stand and lying when they know these things are true, when they know this was said. There's some Scientology parents involved in this who wrote Scientology reports when it happened in 2002, 2003.
Right, and that's something that's been frustrating for me, and I
Oh,
know it's been frustrating for you, is that you and I are aware of evidence in this case that the jury's not going to hear,
correct.
that is just simply not going to be introduced. And specifically, a lot of it has to do with Scientology's involvement after these things were reported to them. And I understand why the prosecutor and why Judge Olmedo want to keep things more focused on the testimony from the women and other witnesses and not on the Scientology stuff.
Yes,
But it is frustrating because, one of the things I've always said about Scientology is it's this ultra bureaucratic organization. They
sure.
write everything down. And there are documents from that time which could be introduced about how Scientology handled this back then that
Correct.
the jury's not going to hear about. And I hope we can bring out some of that to the public, but for right now, it's just not part of the trial. It's frustrating, isn't it?
It's Tony, so frustrating. You and I get on the phone with each other often and like literally cry about it, because it is so frustrating, and they deserve justice, as all victims deserve justice, right? When because it's not easy to report crimes to the authorities because most survivors don't report abuse to law enforcement, and not just Scientology victims, and it's it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking on so many levels. And with Scientology, what makes it worse is that when you do report a crime, like you said, it's all written down, right? Because I was an auditor, I was a counselor in Scientology. I had to do a whole course on how to take notes to put it into people's folders. So when these Scientologists reported their crime, it's written down. It's recorded. Not only is it written down in their folders, Tony, but it's recorded.
Right.
Then
Yeah.
what
One of the,
happens?
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh,
Well, no, I was just
when
going to bring
yeah,
up that one name that, in this particular case, the person that wrote all that down was the auditor that sec checked both James
security
O.
checks,
One
yes,
and
yes.
Danny Masterson, and that's Angela Clare.
And all of a
And
sudden, Angela Clare can't be found. Now, I've been a celebrity center for 35 years. There, the Tony. You might not know this about Sea Org members, but they are in the same place most of their Scientology career. All of a sudden,
Right.
all of these Sea Org members who were involved in this knew about it. Can't be found.
That's right. Angie
Can't be found.
LeClaire, well-known figure at Celebrity Center, who interrogated both
Mhm.
Jane Doe 1 and Danny Masterson after this incident and wrote
Uh-huh.
everything down,
Uh-huh.
who may be maybe perhaps the most valuable witness. Uh, Suddenly she's no longer there,
Right. And
and the
now Mike
LAPD can't find her?
and now right, exactly. The Hollywood division, anyway. Um
Yes.
because, Celebrity Center is right down the street from there, from the Hollywood division. But yes, the other part of this, and Tony and Mike Rinder, who is the former head of OSA, the department that hides people, that tries to hide crimes, that stalks people, and does these websites and these running Twitter, these Twitter front groups, the Stan League. They're all Sea Org members and working for OSA. And that stands for the Office of Special Affairs. All churches have that, right, Tony? A special department that spends millions upon millions of tax-paying money, tax-exempt money to destroy people. All churches have that, right, Tony?
Don't they all have a secret police?
Okay. So, well, yeah, well, just polka. But so now, Tony, the other part of this is when you tell your auditor. Now, remember, I was an auditor in Scientology. Um, and Mike would agree to this too, that this is what they do. They take all the folders, they cull the folders, CULL. They cull the folders. They go, okay, who knew about it? Who was told? Who did the Jane Does tell in Scientology? Okay, gather all of them up and bring them in. Then Julian Schwartz will sit and say, you can say nothing. What did Jane Does tell you? Say nothing. If you're called by the police, this is what you're going to say. We're going to get you a lawyer. You don't have to cooperate, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then they disappear. Mike will attest to this. Disappear the Sea Org members so they don't get subpoenaed, right?
Yep.
The other part of this, as an auditor in Scientology, you have to ask the victim, well, what did you do to receive such an action as rape?
Yeah.
And secondly, they coerce these confessions from you that you've done it in another lifetime. And that's the only reason why you're upset about it today, because you yourself have done it
In past lives.
in another life. And then they extract this coerced, fed confession, because they feed this to children. They'll tell children, like if children go into an auditing session in Scientology and say, a Sea Org member touched me or did something inappropriate, raped me, molested me, beat me, and you tell that to an auditor, the auditor's job, they can't just counsel you. They have to follow the written rules of how to quote unquote counsel somebody. And they tell these children, they teach these children, well, you were a person before in another life, right? Remember we taught you that here L. Ron Hubbard says you lived before, so you were a man or an older woman at one point in another lifetime? Yes. So could you think of something that maybe you did at another lifetime to a child? And they have this e-meter that they force these kids on, right?
Right.
And they
Right.
say, now remember, the meter doesn't lie, right? The meter doesn't lie. And they go, that, what are you thinking? And now that that's been suggested, Tony, to somebody who's impressionable, remember, this is a parental figure to you. Well, you just planted the seed of suggestion. And now the mind is answering the questions. And this auditor is saying, what are you thinking of? Tell me what you're thinking of. Oh, I'm thinking of hurting a child. I hurt a child myself. Right. Yes, exactly. The meter is right. Yes, the meter says that. That's okay. Tell me when. Tell me where. Tell me what you see. And they're writing all this down. And this is supposedly a confession.
Right.
And then they use those out of context to smear your name later. But this is what they're doing to children today. This is Scientology technology, Tony.
Yeah. Well, and I am very interested in Angie LeClaire in particular because I think they know she knows something, and
Well, they know that
there
you don't think it, Tony. That is the truth. She knows.
Right.
Tony, because she
There's
was
one
the auditor here. Yes, she was the
right.
person counseling everybody here.
There's a little mystery in this case, and some other reporters and I have been trying to get at it.
Yeah.
The defense a year ago made a request, and I managed to get a copy of it. And the defense was asking for documents related to an attempted um, subpoena.
Uh-huh.
No, not no. I'm sorry. An attempted search warrant
Uh-huh.
on the Church of Scientology
Mhm.
by the LAPD in this case.
Okay.
What the hell is an attempted search warrant?
I'd never
That's what
heard
we're
of it.
trying to find out.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's apparently early on in this case, because all these records are sitting there at the Celebrity
Sitting
Center.
there. Well, they might be locked up now because, like Mike has mentioned before, a lot of times they take these folders and they lock them away, right? They can
But
be,
interrogations of Danny
of
Masterson,
course.
all this stuff. And apparently, at some point, the LAPD attempted to serve a search warrant on the LAPD.
Right.
What the heck does that mean? Does that mean Scientology didn't let him in and the LAPD gave up? I so that's
Probably.
yeah, yeah,
From what we know now, that's a very likely possibility.
right,
This half-assed police work when it comes to Scientology and anything related to Scientology cases. This is what I'm saying. We don't know.
yeah.
We don't know what has been attempted. We don't know what victims came forward and were squashed. We don't know. And that's why I continue to say I just would like Scientology added into this investigation when it comes to Polka. And
Well,
it
I
is time for people to start doing the right thing, Tony. Look, as we mentioned, everything is written down in Scientology. So let's say let's just play a little game with ourselves. Let's say the Jane Does went in and said this in one of their Scientology sessions, right?
yeah,
Because in all likelihood, because you have you're forced to be there every day, you have to say what's going on in your daily life. Let's say they brought this up because they would have if they had any paperwork suggesting that this didn't happen or that they had something to to show Danny's innocent, wouldn't they just have given those over? Shouldn't they have
right,
just given all right? Right?
yep,
Okay. Now they're claiming like these things are confidential. These things. Oh, so they're only confidential when it protects you or a Scientologist. These files are not confidential when people leave and speak out against Scientology. that's that. That's when we're all guilty of heinous crimes. All of a sudden,
right. They show
yes.
up on websites smearing you and me and everybody else. Yeah.
Hmm. Exactly, exactly. So that it's all. I don't know, Tony. What do you think? I mean, how do you think? It's just
Well, it's been frustrating for me knowing, what you and I both know
yes.
about some Scientology evidence that's not being entered. It's very frustrating to me, but I understand why they are focusing on the things they are. And the DA's job is to convince a jury that Danny Masson is guilty of these charges. And I just, I know he's the thing about Scientology is separate. I hope it gets out in the civil case. People are asking me, won't this stuff come out in testimony in a civil trial? But a trial is highly unlikely with the civil lawsuit. It's probably going to be settled at some point. This was our best chance to get some of this said in open court. So it's
By the
frustrating.
way, we're not up to anything uh, nefarious. We want the truth to come out, Tony. We want
Right.
the truth to come out. That's all. We want justice, and we want people to know what Scientology has been doing when it comes to crimes committed by other Scientologists. Not just in this case, but in many, many others, Tony. We were talking
And
about,
it's
I brought up the daycare, the Scientology. This person because Scientology didn't report it and then told the parents that they're Scientologists, that they can't sorry, let me close the door, Tony. Hold on a second.
Yeah, it's the same person. This Julian Swartz is the kind of star figure in that story I wrote 7 years ago about the daycare, and he's one of the central figures in this story. It's the same person who's telling people they can't go to the police.
Correct.
And people have asked me why hasn't he been called to testify, but I know DA Mueller. I've been told that DA Mueller does not want to put someone on the stand that's likely to lie, and so he's not putting on these various Scientology figures that are attached to the case. But here's what I'm hoping, Leah, is
Yeah,
that if there's a conviction, and it looks like things are going to wrap up this week, that if there's a conviction, that and then enables some other agencies, wink, wink, who have
yeah,
been looking at this for years to finally do something about, okay, Danny and the rapes is the focus of this one, but there should be a separate focus on the obstruction of justice,
correct.
the subverting of the law enforcement. Why isn't the California Attorney General looking into LAPD corruption in regards to Scientology? I mean, all this stuff should, I hope, and between the trial, but also the amazing work you've been doing lately, should get some interest going in this.
And to you, Tony, and listen, there's only a handful of us. I was just telling Angelo today because he's like, "Honey, what you're dealing with," it, he's like, "I don't know how." Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about, like you said, Tony. There's a lot of things we don't talk about. Pardon me. And one day, I hope that we were able to tell all of these stories,
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
be held back by whatever the restrictions that are put
Well,
upon
we're
us.
held
Yeah.
we're held back because we don't want to mess up, these law enforcement agencies. It's like, you and I know things we'd like to tell people, but we
Yes.
don't want to step on Mueller's toes or other people's. But if they're not going to do anything, what are we supposed to do with this information,
I
you
know
know?
it's frustrating because it's like we want to give the public, right, everything that they should know. And we again, but at the end of the day, we also just want the legal process to go as it should, right? And we don't want to overstep or to give out any information um,
Right,
that could be used. And I'm stuttering only because I don't want to say something that could be misunderstood.
right,
But a lot of us have information that there's stories that we don't tell because we want to protect the person from fair game and
right,
from Scientology because they don't have a platform to be protected, or they don't have the ability to make sure that their families will be protected, and they don't have what they need, right? To just kind of go all out. And so, yes, there's a lot of things we do know that we're basically trying to protect people. I'm just going to end it there because I don't want
right.
to sound like
No,
I'm
and I
trying to come up with an answer. And the other thing, Tony, that I want to say is there's only I would say maybe 10 of us that are really reporting what's really going on. And we do this in hopes that, like you said, the agencies that are responsible for investigating these things will take notice, right? But it's just a small amount of us doing it, and
well,
yeah.
this week we'll get a big answer about how things are going. It should just be a few more days, and then
And regardless, Tony, it's not like we're gonna give up, if the jury for some reason doesn't see the facts of the case already is enough, we're gonna continue to fight. It's not gonna
well,
be
let's
over.
let's
Yeah.
talk. I hope we can talk afterwards, and we'll figure out the next step to making sure people know this information and the things that
Yes.
maybe didn't get into the trial that they should know.
Yes.
And
And
we'll
and
just
also, Tony, that didn't get into our show and didn't get into documentaries
Right.
and didn't get
Oh,
onto your
yeah.
website and didn't get into, because like we said, there's a lot of things that we do and don't do to protect people who, just come to us just for advice or comfort.
There's so much we have to hold back, and I just
Yes,
hope people understand that we're doing our best. Look, I just want the agencies to look.
I know.
I mean, that's
Same,
all we can do is just try to
same.
get the government to take a real look at this group and its controversies and its abuses. And this is going to be a big week. So thank you so much for what you've been doing. Of course, now I expect tomorrow, Monday morning, when I go into court, Philip Cohen's going to be very upset about your Corey Polka tweets, and we may get another mistrial. But he's 0 for 8 already, so we'll
Right.
see.
Yes. Well, let us
Leah,
know.
Leah,
Let us know what he's wearing, Tony. That's
I will
that.
let you know what he's wearing. Yes.
But Tony, thank you for everything that you do, and as well, like I said, there's just a small group of us who continue to expose Scientology, and and especially to the victims and survivors who continue to fight. As again, a very small amount of people, and we should acknowledge their bravery and their courage and their resilience, for
Absolutely.
continuing. Yes,
That's why we do what we do, is these
exactly.
people are so brave to come
Yes,
out and risk everything. So,
yeah.
Leah, thank you for everything you do,
Thank
and
you, Tony.
we'll
And
hope we get
thank
to
you
talk to
to
you
all
soon
of you
after.
who listen, Tony, and support our efforts, who have nothing to do with Scientology. We thank you. We couldn't do it without you, honestly.
All right, Leah, thank you
All right,
so
baby.
much.
All right, honey.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
Now I'm hunkered down in Bunker Town again, again, again to witness history, ride the storm, wait to see a reckoning, and the day they all come. Oh, but I'm hunkered down in Bunker Town again, again, again. I'm hunkered down in Bunker Town again, again, again. Yeah, I'm hunkered down in Bunker Town again.